Welcome into Double Fries No Slaw, Sunday, November 16th, or an hour later tonight. But I did schedule it for 7, so we're not late. Like, we actually did start at 7 p.m. before I get any comments from people watching. TJ Pinger, Richie Barnes, Florida State wins again, 5-5 on the season, a win away from bowl eligibility. Double Fries No Slaw brought to you by Guthrie's. You can visit all three of their locations: 1818 West Tennessee, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Appalachia Parkway. Richie, a lot to talk about tonight. We'll talk about the game. We'll talk about the next two games quickly. We'll talk about FSU big picture. Talk about actually a really good moment from this weekend, which I don't think we talked about on the show the other day. Maybe we recorded Wednesday and news started coming out on Thursday about a returner to Doak Campbell Stadium. But I guess before we get into it, I used to ask you this every week. Now we've just been in a bad mood every week. I don't even ask you. How's your weekend been?
It's been pretty good. It's outside of 2023, any win you can get has seemingly been a good Saturday. So it was nice to, first half was a little rocky, and we'll get into it. But kind of coasting to a win for Florida State, that was awesome. Saw a thriller with the Bucks and Bills today. Unfortunately, the Bucks did not come out on top, but really happy with how they played. So we knew this was the toughest stretch in their schedule. But yeah, just been helping the wife with some schoolwork and church this morning and the game this afternoon. So it's been a pretty packed weekend, actually, even if not really leaving the house too much. How about you, man?
Yeah, pretty good. I feel like so we had some friends in town this weekend. Yeah, we've just been going all weekend, and so I'm just drained. And then obviously we played late last night. I mean, not normal 7 p.m., 7:30 kickoff, whatever. But just kind of feel worn out. So ready to get this show on the road, get rolling, and go from there. I've got a short week, Richie. I mean, I know I'm telling that to a guy who is fun employed right now, but I do have a short week. Like, unless something crazy happens, like I've got a ticket, I may have a place to stay. That I'm not as worried about. Like, hotels in Raleigh are not insane, but I'm leaving on Thursday to head to Raleigh, and then Florida State plays on Friday night. And, then heading to Gainesville the next week. So listen, everything I say tonight.
Saturday.
Say what?
Stress-free Saturday for us.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see, man. It looked like, I don't know, man. It will be a stress-free Saturday where you won't have to watch 3 hours of FSU football, but based on the outcome of the game on Friday night, maybe we'll stress about other things, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But on to the show. Florida State gets a win, their second ACC win of the year. They're no longer they really weren't anyway, because Boston College is so terrible that we weren't, we weren't in the cellar anyway. But we've moved, I think, from the cellar to the basement with their second ACC win of the year. They double their ACC win total from last season, Richie. They have their third win against an ACC team since December of 2023, and they have increased their win total by 150% from last year too. 5-5. What stood out to you? Listen, I don't know how. We don't have to do a game recap, but what stood out to you the most on the game? We'll go big picture in a minute, but on the game, what stood out to you?
I thought the defense did well. We talked about it on the Wednesday night show, how Virginia Tech is just awful, especially offensively. So, Jones had a few big runs here and there. He was their leading rusher with 18 carries, but still only 79 yards, I believe, 72 or 79. I thought they kept him in check pretty good. And, what I did like to see is that, Tommy did not seem as hesitant to run the ball.
Yeah.
He seemed very confident, when he had to take it down and go with it. And then, I mean, the elephant in the room, Deuce Robinson is just a beast. Like he is one of the best receivers in the country. I think he might be better than Johnny Wilson was when he was at Florida State.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly, because I think Johnny Wilson was phenomenal at Florida State. But just seeing that, obviously we're still very clearly committed to the run. Even though the first half started off slowly, it was a little frustrating, but again, and you don't get bonus points for this, but I saw a team that still has not quit, and that's what I was a little concerned about. And if VT had came out and punched us in the face, what would I hate using this word? What would have our response been? But yeah, overall, I was pleased with the performance. You did what you were supposed to do. You had a 13.5 point spread. You won by 20. I did not have us winning by that much. I think I picked us 30-22. So they went out and won comfortably. So I cannot really complain too much about the game.
Yeah, I was, you mentioned a few of the guys. I mean, Deuce Robinson was where I was going to start too. And so I won't go, kind of much further than what you've just said. I did think just the way they played overall, I think like I didn't even really think they quit against Clemson. I just thought they got beat. It didn't look like a lack of effort to me. It just looked like a team that wasn't very good. And so, man, against Stanford, same thing. Like last year, this team quit like horrifically to where you just like it didn't even look like they cared. And I will say, like, for all the ups and downs, I know we're painting. I mean, I'm glad we are at least saying this after a win and not after a loss, because it feels crappy to say like, oh, we got our heads beat in, but at least we didn't quit. You won the game. You did what you were supposed to do. There never felt like a moment in this game where Florida State wasn't going to win. Right. I mean, to kick off, I mean, sure, anything can kind of happen from there. But they did a really good job on Drones, who is just not good. I mean, he's a great runner, but he's like a poor man's poor man Tommy. like he's like Tula. He's a great athlete, great runner. He can't throw worth a lick. And I know Tommy is not like the most prolific passer by any means. But I mean, he makes Tommy Castellanos look like freaking Joe Namath. Like he is so bad throwing the ball. And Florida State, I thought, did a really good job of pressuring him. And yeah, he got loose a couple of times, and athletes are going to make plays. I mean, he's playing at a Power 4 school as a starting quarterback. Like he's going to make plays at times. But overall, like Florida State came out and took care of business. I thought Deuce Robinson was really, really good. I thought your point on Tommy is really applicable, if I could use the right word. I mean, he did. He looked like he had a different gear. I don't know if Virginia Tech's defense is just that slow or that bad. It would surprise me if not. But like he just looks quicker. And I'm not. That's not like a shot at time me. Like, oh, you did it against a bad defense. Like he looked faster. And I don't know if that's just, it's been long enough now. And, he didn't have to run a ton last week. Just off the top of my head, I don't know like how many total carries he had or anything like that, but he just looked different. He looked like he was able to get off a little faster. He looked like he was just much more comfortable. And, depending on, what you're wanting to see down the stretch, which, I feel like Florida State fans are very mixed, even in their own minds of, well, I want to see the team play well, but also, want change. I mean, if you want to see Florida State come out and win their next 2 games on the road, you are going to need a Tommy that is pretty fully healthy. I mean, Raleigh's obviously been a house of horrors, and then, UF was a player or 2 away from upsetting a playoff team in Ole Miss yesterday. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you needed what you got out of Tommy. I mean, Usman Kroma leading the team in rushing. He didn't get the touchdown that I took the more on, but he was phenomenal, averaging 5.5 yards a carry. Sam Singleton was good as well, not as good of an average at just 3.8 yards a carry. But I thought you did a good job. The reverse stuff that, Gus has loved to run. They probably saw something on tape this week that told them that Virginia Tech wasn't going to be able to defend against it because we were so much faster than them. I mean, Deuce is not like blazing fast, but he was wide open at times, just running behind their defense. And so, I mean, Virginia Tech, again, they grade out as about the 80th. I mean, Richie mentioned this the other day. They grade out as about the 80th best team of 136. I mean, you think about that, like where that stacks up against the rest of the Power 4. It's the very it's the bottom of it, right? You've even got a few FCS schools that grade out much better than they do. So I don't want to pretend like this is some kind of oh my gosh, like win one for the Gipper. How did you do it? Like Virginia Tech was a bad team and you won by 20. I mean, you were favored by 14. So you covered the spread. You did what you were supposed to do. There was never again a moment where you didn't feel like you were going to win this game. Again, they start slow every week at this point of the year. That's just kind of who they are. Like me coming on here every Wednesday night and saying, well, I think one of the keys of the game is to not start slow. That's not going to change. I don't think now that you're 10 games into the season, they just start slow. It's who they are, but they did a good job of staying in the game. If Virginia Tech, if the defense wouldn't have been playing well and Virginia Tech goes up 10-0 or 14-3 or something like that crazy, then yeah, you probably are a little nervous on if your team can come back or not. But the defense kept them in it despite the offense's slow starts, despite another missed field goal, and you won very comfortably. Again, it was 10-7 at halftime, and you knew you were getting the ball back first. Not that that is something that we've excelled at, just going down the field and scoring to open the second half. But even at halftime at 10-7, it felt like, man, Florida State's going to win this game. Virginia Tech, just too many mistakes. They had an interception. They had a fumble down inside the red zone. They weren't very good kicking either. So it was Florida State's game kind of from start to finish. The Desir twins are somebody that no matter who the coach is next year that you've got to find a way to keep. They were really, really good. Yeah. Again, this week, I saw that, Desir has more sacks than like Armando Blunt. And he's like really close to Bain or something. So like he's, doing a really good job. I thought overall defensively, like, yeah, they moved the ball some. What did they end up with a total on yardage? 125 rushing and 238 rushing, 125. So you held them under 400 yards. I mean, in today's football, that's all you can ask for. They score a touchdown off of a drone scramble, and then they score a garbage time touchdown really late when the game was kind of out of reach, no longer in doubt, 3-score game in the fourth quarter. Overall, a good performance from FSU. Again, Virginia, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Virginia Tech is good by any stretch of the imagination. This is a team that Old Dominion blew out. This is a team that doesn't have a coach. This is a team that I expect Miami to beat by 30 next week. Like, this is a bad team. But they beat a bad team the way you're supposed to beat a bad team. I was happy for the seniors. I was happy for the guys. I mean, I know Tommy walked with them and then mentioned after the game that he's going to try and get back next week. If it was his last game in Doak, I was happy for him. His effort, despite the team's struggles and despite all our frustration, his effort has been really good this year. I think, if you zoom in and do what we're doing right now and just look at the game alone, it was a really good game. It was a really good atmosphere. I was happy for the seniors. I'm glad they're one win away from bowl eligibility. I know some people may not be happy about that. There are parts of me that have mixed feelings for sure. But I think overall, it's a team that didn't quit, didn't go out there and prove all the haters and doubters wrong. And, they took care of business the way they needed to.
Yeah, and I was happily surprised by the crowd. I wasn't really sure what to expect. It was senior night, but it wasn't parents' weekend. It wasn't homecoming or anything like that. And it was a good crowd to include the student section. So I guess, being a night game probably helps that. The weather, from everything I heard, was amazing up in Tallahassee on Saturday. So, that helps too. But yeah, really happy with that. And again, you talked about going up, 10-7 at the half. It's crazy. Virginia Tech really, you saw their game plan in the first half. They said, we're going to shorten this game as much as possible.
Yeah.
To the point where Florida State only had 3 possessions in the first half, which is nuts to think about. You only had 3 possessions in one half. And I don't think either team punted the ball the entire game, if I can recall correctly. So it's just a weird first half. And then, with the better team came out. And again, I'm not sitting here saying Florida State's some juggernaut or they're good. Virginia Tech's really bad. Florida State is much better. And they did what they should have done in the second half. And it was kind of enjoyable to see, to sit on the couch and once again enjoy some Florida State football. I haven't felt that good because how good can you feel against East Texas and A&M or Kent State? I haven't felt that good about a game since the Alabama game when I just kept to again and again look over at my wife and smile and be like, oh, Florida State's taking out Bama today. So it was a refreshing weekend for Florida State football.
Yeah, and our thoughts haven't changed on
No.
where. Do you mention back to that Alabama game? I was telling somebody the other day, like my biggest fear is getting caught up on one of those video boards. They showed a Florida fan. No, I'm sorry. It was a Texas fan right after like the Georgia onside kick, and the Texas fan just was like, and I was like, man, I'm so glad that I've never been caught on one of those screens. Because my face looks like that the entire game. Like I am so nervous whether we're winning or losing. And I remember even being like that during the Bama game, and kept looking over to my friend that was in the sitting right there with me, and I didn't want to celebrate. So anyway, that's what I thought of when you mentioned like, yeah, I kept looking over at my wife. I was like, yeah, I was doing the same thing. Like, is this really real? And then the rest of the year, I think I've kind of done the same thing. Like, is this really real? But so our thoughts haven't changed big picture on, what may or may not be best for FSU. And it does kind of, I'm sure for the people that went to the game and got to, like, I had a buddy that took his kids to the game, and I do think that if you can kind of like zoom in on what's actually happening, it is fun to win football games, and it is fun to score into the 30s, and it is fun to dominate an opponent like you're supposed to and have highlight type plays. And, the Deuce Robinson catch and score reminded me of Kelvin Benjamin in 2013 against Florida, where he was just like, get off me. And he went in. Like plays like that are supposed to be exciting.
Travis Rudolph against Syracuse. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. I mean, there was a lot of exciting plays that happened last night. And so if you can just appreciate the game for what it is and appreciate the performance that you saw from the team, that ultimately the players on the field are not going to be the decision makers for things that happen later. And truth be told, they probably echo what a former quarterback of this university thinks very highly of their coach. They probably want what's best for him, right? Like all of the players probably, whether they're going to be here next year or not, want what's best for Mike Norvell and this staff. And credit to them, man, credit to them for not having a Florida versus Kentucky moment. I know Florida played really well yesterday against Ole Miss and kept it really close. All that lane stuff is crazy. We can talk about that at the end if you want to. But, I am glad that they haven't just had like a fully quit moment, and hopefully that doesn't come in the last 2 weeks. Hopefully we don't see a 38-7 result against an awful team like Kentucky. And I don't think we will, because I do think the team cares. I think the players care. I do think they're trying hard. Their talent level or skill level at the end of the day is about 500. That's just kind of what they are at this point. And that's actually exactly what they are. But I do think the effort's there, and that is impressive to see. Probably one of the cooler things that we saw was the way that Florida State incorporated Ethan Pritchard into this thing, right? Like it was great to get the win. It was great to never really have the game in doubt. I mean, I was telling you guys before the game, I was able to keep an eye very much on the Texas-Georgia game. I was able to keep an eye on that Ole Miss-Florida game because Florida State, this thing was never in doubt. We were never nervous about it. And so it was nice to not only have that, but the way that they brought him back for practice late in the week, the way they brought him back to Doak, he left his, I think just a rehabilitation facility that he was at, and come back. And then the way they honored him, like his dad, I think I saw carrying in the hammer or whatever that they break the rock with, him being at the game, them honoring him. It is a cool moment. And what gets lost in this season and what gets lost in kind of the disappointment of being, 4-5 going into this game is the fact that like that dude was centimeters away from dying as a true freshman, just kind of wrong place, wrong time. He wasn't involved in anything. And the way that, not that it's surprising that Florida State would, bring him back or his teammates would rally around him. It did feel like, okay, well, they're playing for something a little bit bigger right now. And him being there, I do think was an emotional lift just to go along with the crowd being there. And, if there are 40,000 people that go to that game last night, Richie, maybe the team doesn't play as well. Maybe they feel like, well, if the fans quit, why are we even out here playing? And I do think all of those little things factor into, but that was a really cool moment. And just the fact that he was there and part of that. And I mean, that's an 18-year-old kid, like we could talk about all the different things about what we're disappointed about or what this sucks or that sucks or whatever. At the end of the day, he's living out his dream to basically just still be alive and still be involved with FSU football. The Ethan Pritchard side of this was really, really cool.
Yeah. And if you're not aware, I think most people watching probably are, he was shot in the head in a case of mistaken identity, He was just trying to give his aunt a ride, I believe, is who he was with. And not many people who get shot in the head walk away, and or end up living. So the fact that he showed the fight, and having the whole team be there when he was released from the hospital, when he got discharged, and then honoring him on the field. And I don't know if he'll ever play football again. It's that's really tough to say. I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I'm sure he would love to, but the fact that he could be there and they could showcase him on the jumbotron and just show the love for him, I thought that was really cool because there's a brotherhood. And we both said our feelings about Mike Norvell and what we feel about what his position should be in this program moving forward. But man, he's someone who truly, truly cares about his players, and you can tell his players care about him. You mentioned, Jordan, in his podcast, how he's come to the defense of Norvell. We have our opinions; they may differ from others, but it was just a really cool situation to see that, for him to be able to be there. And like you mentioned, his dad being the one to get to carry out the sledgehammer to break the rock. I just thought that was so cool to see. Florida State football, they may not be a great team, but they truly are a brotherhood, and I love that.
Let's give Tallahassee Ford some love, and then I do see we have a super chat, so we'll get to that. Maybe we'll talk some candidates. We'll get off the game for a little bit and go that way. Who knows if we'll end up needing that or not, but we are going to talk about it because Le'Veon, if I'm saying that right, LeEvan, hit us up. Tallahassee Ford, make sure that if you are in the market for a new vehicle, you do stop by Tallahassee Ford. You can also hit them up online. You don't even have to go in. You can take care of everything on one website. It's TallahasseeFord.com. My buddy Bill McKinney and the team over there, including Jacob Vickers, will go ahead and get you taken care of. They won't be beat on price. They'll deliver the car to you, whatever you are in need of, a car, truck, used, new, whatever you're looking for. Let my friends over at Tallahassee Ford get you taken care of. Richie, we do have a super chat. Let's read this. Thoughts on Franklin being in talks with Virginia Tech? Is he waiting to see if FSU opens? Who do we get if he goes to Virginia Tech? Hashtag go Noles. LeEvan, thank you very much for the support. This is a good jumping off place. We didn't even have this in the script of what we would talk about, but let's talk about it. Report comes out yesterday during College Game Day from Pete Thamel that James Franklin and Virginia Tech are in serious negotiations, serious conversations. Rich, I have some thoughts on this, but I do want to see what you think. My thought on this is that I think that either the Virginia Tech side or the Franklin side are use that report to Pete Thamel as a way to put pressure on someone else. If it was Virginia Tech that leaked it, it was very much to put pressure on Franklin to get the thing done. Like, hey man, we're across the finish line or almost to the finish line. Let's get across it. If it was the Franklin side, it very much feels like, hey, I want it very well known that I'm close with them. If somebody else at a better job, hint, hint, wink, wink, in Tallahassee, if somebody else or Auburn would like to come hire me, I am here and I am available. What were your thoughts on, and that's not to say it doesn't get done with Virginia Tech. Those were just my thoughts when I saw the report come out.
Yeah, it's funny. Me and my college friends were joking around before the game that, last night was the James Franklin Bowl, right? Because if Florida State had lost a game that they absolutely should have won, which they did, there's a good chance that Mike Norvell may not be employed as of right now at 7:24 p.m. on Sunday night. And I think if that were the case, James Franklin would probably be announced at Florida State by Tuesday. I think Virginia Tech absolutely wants Franklin, but I think he's one of those guys. He's kind of like me right now, right? Unemployed. I don't need a job right now. I'm going to wait for something that's, what I kind of expect to have. However, if things go on long enough, I might just take something that's just there and available. So I think it might have come from the Franklin side, to be honest. Is he a Sexton client? Because if he is, then that alone tells me all I need to know. But yeah, I think that I think Franklin is definitely considering Virginia Tech. However, he wants to hold out for something bigger and better. And I think obviously he's a multimillionaire, so he's not in a rush to sign a contract right away right now. And it's kind of part of the confusion that I have with our administration of what are we waiting for, because Franklin wanted to come to Florida State last hiring cycle, when Norvell got hired. That you could have made that happen, but we're still paying Willie Taggart, so we went the cheap route. It delivered us 2023, so we had one great year out of it. But other than that, nothing has worked out. I don't know, TJ. I do think it's probably a leak from the Franklin side to say, hey, if you really want me, make a move now. And as much as I enjoyed the game yesterday and winning, a loss might have made things accelerate a little quicker, if that makes sense.
I do. No, I agree. I think it's more likely that it was from the Franklin side. That seems to be what makes the most sense. But at the same time, I could see it being a few different things. But yeah, like it feels like James Franklin very much wants we're not going to get any Virginia Tech viewers anyway, so it doesn't matter. But it feels like James Franklin doesn't want to have to settle. Because let's be honest, like if the Florida State job was open and Florida State wanted him, or I mean, shoot, how many jobs that are open right now are better than Virginia Tech's job? Well, Florida State, LSU, Florida, Auburn. Is Arkansas better?
Yes.
It's SEC.
Yeah.
At worst, it's a push. Like at the very worst. Here's one. Is UCLA better?
No, I don't think so.
So to me, those are very close. For the right guy. Like if James Franklin was at UCLA with Big Ten money, I know that athletic department's a little bit of a dumpster fire, but I think it's with the Big Ten's money and bringing in a candidate like that, like who knows how to win in the Big Ten and recruiting Southern Cal, I don't think Virginia Tech, if Virginia Tech's better, I don't think it's like infinitely better. I think they're in the same tier at worst.
Well, I think Franklin wants to coach in the South. That's where he made his name
Southern
at Vanderbilt, right? That's where he built his brand, so to speak, at Vandy, taking a school that was, essentially, the Duke before Duke became somewhat respectable, and elevated them, and then ended up at Penn State because of what he did at Vanderbilt. He's familiar with the South. He knows recruiting in the South, which is what I really love. I think he would much rather end up somewhere in the Southeast. I think he's kind of holding Virginia Tech like, it's like that one girl that, she's kind of hot, but not too hot. And I don't want to commit to her. I don't want to marry her. Let me see what else is out there. But then I realized, okay, there's nothing else for me. So let me just take this one. That's the feeling I kind of get right now.
Richie says that Franklin's the guy at the bar who,
yes,
all the nines have left.
It's 2 a.m. It's closing time.
Yeah, man, there's a 6 over there in the corner and the nines are gone. So let me run after this 6. Do you want, so outside of your thoughts on Mike Norvell, so you can't use the excuse of like, oh, I think, Franklin would be better than Norvell because, no pun intended. Frankly, I think a lot of people would. Like, do you want James Franklin? Like, is that somebody that you would be like that? Is that somebody that would excite you?
Yes, 100%. I think he's a phenomenal coach. I know what people will say is, he loses every big game, and it's hard to think of a big game that he's won. Oh, by the way, he went to the college football semifinal last year. I think he would be phenomenal. He's familiar with the Southeast. He has relationships built in with high school coaches, high schools, a lot of different things. I think he would be a home run hire for Florida State, because if you can guarantee me 9-3 or 10-2 every year after the crap we've been through the past 6 years outside of 2023, I would take that very happily.
No, I'm all there on Franklin. Like, people say, oh, we couldn't win the big game. I know we've talked about this before. We'll talk about other candidates here in just a minute, but I would be pretty all in on Franklin. I don't know that he is going to be a sure thing, like national championship winner at Florida State, but there's no one else that is available. I mean, who's the number one candidate on everybody's board? Lane? I don't know that he's a national championship winning coach either.
And does Lane leave Ole Miss? Like, I don't think he does.
I mean, and think about all the good coaches right now. Like, I wasn't sitting there saying like, oh man, Kirby Smart's going to go win national championships, or, Steve Sarkisian or Dan Lanning or some of these big names. They're Ryan Day. He's going to just take over and start winning national championships. I mean, it took him several years to get there anyway. So yeah, I mean, does Franklin miss a lot of boxes? Yeah. I mean, but he also checks a lot of boxes. And the big complaint against Franklin is that he couldn't beat Ohio State and Michigan. Like, that's it. Like, he couldn't beat Ohio State and Michigan. And there are about 135 programs in this country, or 130 programs in this country, that could not consistently or really ever beat Ohio State and Michigan on a regular basis. And so if that's his biggest knock, then that's his biggest knock. Nobody around this place, nobody that we're playing recruits like Ohio State does. So like, if that's the knock, then bring it on, man. So I do think that Franklin is an interesting candidate. No candidate checks every box for me because there's not a prime Nick Saban out there, right? And so you are going to have to give and take on anybody. Is there anybody else, like say Franklin does sign with Virginia Tech tomorrow, and after that, Norvell loses these last two, they fire him. Who's the next person on your list?
I have no idea, TJ. I've been thinking. I've been thinking about this, and I just cannot come up with a name. It's just. It seems to me like if we're going to do this coaching cycle, you need to get rid of, and I'm sure there have been some back channel discussions with Franklin or Jimmy Sexton, if that's who his agent is. I'm not positive on that.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's been some back channel discussions. I think it's Franklin or bust right now. And if Norvell does come back in 2026, I think it's because Florida State and Sexton / Franklin could not come up with an agreement, because these coaching contracts are out of control right now. Everybody wants a 8 to 10 year deal at $10+ million. The schools need to fight back and say, no, we're not doing this anymore with these guaranteed buyouts, because it's ridiculous. You don't have that in the NFL. Why would you have that in college? It makes no sense at all, especially when you need to redirect funds towards facilities, NIL, whatever else it may be. I can't think of anybody. I don't want to bring in another group of 5 head coach, or, I guess we mentioned a few weeks ago, I think I said I would take one of the most elite offensive or defensive coordinators in the SEC or the Big Ten. That's who I would pick. So it's a limited pool, but you have a guy right now who I think could be really good at Florida State. What are you waiting for, Michael Alford?
Okay, so you mentioned that. A name that has, just in my mind, I haven't been told this, nobody's alluded to this for me. Again, we're still trying to take care of problem A before we get to problem B of who to hire. Glenn Schumann is a really interesting name to me. Georgia's defensive coordinator, somebody that's been mentioned to me a couple of times only by like people saying, I'd really like to have him. Nobody connected with FSU. I'm not putting any kind of rumors out that that's where Florida State's going. But came up through the Alabama tenure, was at Alabama as a GA from 08 to 14. Coached Georgia's inside linebackers for a couple of years, was a co-DC for several years, and then has been the DC for the last 2 years. How about this, Richie? He, again, came up coaching linebackers. It'd be cool to have somebody on staff that cares about that position again, which Florida State has not for 6 seasons. And so, or maybe more. I mean, I think Willie Carey just couldn't find anybody that was any good. But Glenn Schumann is a name that's interesting to me. Again, I don't know. I'm really not sold on any group of 5 candidates. I don't know that any smaller ACC coaches like, Brent Key or Manny Diaz or, Fran Brown moved the needle for me in a massive way. Brent Key is a tier above those two, in my opinion. But I do think Glenn Schumann, again, some of the best coaches in college football right now are coordinators. And I think that is, you maybe have a higher chance to hit there, going and plucking from the Kirby tree or going and plucking from somebody else. I guess he's really from the Saban tree and then came over with Kirby. But I do think that you would have a chance to get a pretty good coordinator there in Schumann. Again, we'll see. Florida State again needs to take care of problem A before they get to problem B. But that would be, if Franklin was a whiff, or if he signed with Virginia Tech and you drug your feet too late and you had to fire Norvell later because they lose a couple of games or just whatever, that would be a name that I would certainly have no problem with. Again, some of the best coaches in the country were offensive and defensive coordinators. When you look at Sark, when you look at Lanning, when you look at Kirby, when you look at DuBois, like there's a bunch of them. So I don't think that's a terrible move if that was the direction Florida State was to go. That would probably have me more excited. A guy that's also recruited at Georgia and certainly does that at a high level. I think he checks a lot of boxes. And people talk about both Ohio State coordinators, both Oregon coordinators. There are other coordinators out there that I'm sure that Florida State would potentially go and look at, but I think that would be a move that I would be pretty okay with.
Yeah,
I do see.
I think
quick thoughts. Sorry.
I think one name that keeps popping up, whether you're talking to fans or from the Florida State beat who covers this team on a daily basis, is Alex Gorish, for the head coach at USF. Let me just say, I am so happy they lost yesterday to Navy because I did not want him. I thought that was a bad idea the entire time. And I hope that just puts an end to any of those thoughts, whether it be within the fans, the media, or the administration, because I get he's a hot name right now. I just do not see him. I see him being Mike Norvell 2.0 if he were to come to Florida State.
Yeah, no, I'm not a huge fan there. And as they continue to drop games that are inexplicable, I think the writing's on the wall for him ever coaching at FSU. Well, maybe not ever, but like no time in the near future. Let me give Campus Course some love. I've told you guys about them a couple of times, but campuscourse.com, you can use our code I'm wearing a Campus Course shirt right now. Go check them out. DFNS20 will save you 20%. I know that some of you are holiday shopping. They've got a deal right now for just about $100. You can get a shirt and this hat. You can also use their site-wide 15% off discount, and you can stack it. Use our code DFNS20 if you're getting 25, DFNS25 if you're getting 2 items or more. I know you guys are doing Black Friday shopping. I know you guys are doing holiday shopping. Their Black Friday sale is already live. And again, I just love the attention to detail on stuff like this, like the little Seminoles that's printed on the inside of the hat. I love the way that this is, I don't even know what you call that. Like, yeah, sticks out a little bit. Like, this is an elite hat. I've got Richie's and Harlan's like right here sitting next to me. And my goal is to get those out before I leave for Raleigh on Thursday. So we'll see, but it is for Christmas. So you guys, you'll be fine if you don't get it this week, but I'm doing my very best to get it out. Very best, meaning I need to go up to the post office and do it. But appreciate Campus Course for their support. Again, DFNS20 if you get 1 item, DFNS25 if you get 2. Let's see if I can squint my eyes real quick. CJ says, okay, let's talk big picture here, Richie, for a minute. This was our last topic anyway, so it fits in well with the super chat. Again, CJ, appreciate the support. FSU cares more about Mike more than the standard or the fans. Cares about Mike more than the standard or the fans. Richie, a lot of ways we can go with this. As I see my buddy Aaron just commented too down there. Aaron gave away a couple of tickets. So appreciate Aaron for hooking a couple of fans up with tickets to the game this weekend. I wanted to mention that before we went too far. As happy as I think I was with the performance by FSU's players, Richie, is it fair to say that what you do against the 80th ranked team in the country when it comes to S&P Plus or any of these advanced analytics, is it fair to say that like what you do against an awful opponent that gets blown out by Old Dominion and doesn't have a coach should not impact whether or not you keep or lose your job? Well, I guess if you lost to them, it should, impact whether or not you lose your job. But my thoughts just on where Florida State is as a program is not has not changed because of the Virginia Tech game. Now, I'm glad they won for the players and Ethan and the fans that went and showed out last night. So, that's fine to go down that route. But my thoughts on where this program is in general have not changed. And a lot of people give us grief for that. It's a very small minority that get upset that we are not happy with where this program is in general. But I think we both care about the program too much to just let it wallow in mediocrity. So again, to phrase the question again, I don't care that they beat Virginia Tech. That has not changed my opinion of where we're at overall.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here. Beating a horrible, when you talk about Power Four conference teams, should not save your job. Like, you beat Virginia Tech, and I think it's 88th actually
It gets even worse
in the SP Plus. But like beating the 88th best team in the country when there's only 60 some Power Four conference teams. So you're talking about group of fives and FCF teams that are ranked way ahead of Virginia Tech. No, that should not save your job. I think that Mike Alford dropped the ball, and he's a friend of the program. He's been on here multiple times. He's done both of us favors in the past, but I still question, what is he thinking in terms of keeping Norvell? Because now, if you go and beat NC State, and then say you go into the swamp and beat Florida, your hands are tied at that point to where you have to keep Norvell. And I do not want that. And I like Mike Norvell too. I've met him several times, and he's been nothing but good to me and my wife. However, again, there is a standard at Florida State, and it feels like we are lowering that standard right now. And that's a bad place to be when you feel like you're okay lowering that standard, because beating a Virginia Tech team the way you should, and it could have been by more, honestly, that in no way whatsoever should be a job saver, beating a team that's that bad. And if that's going to be a job saver, then the standard is not the standard anymore at Florida State. And that has been made painfully obvious. And I guess we'll see in 2.5 weeks or so if Mike Norvell is still employed or not. But yeah, the win against Virginia Tech, like we mentioned, it was enjoyable. It was nice to have a fun game where the second half we were pretty much just coasting. But if that game saves his job, I don't know what to say. I'll always be a Florida State fan. I'm not going to say I'm done with this program, but I would have serious questions about the people, the decision makers in charge. I'll leave it at that.
We get a lot of comments about Bobby. I saw a comment that said, Florida State fans, or we would fire Bobby if this was our standard or expectation. I do just want to point something out. When Bobby Bowden took over, Florida State won one game the year before he got here. In Bobby's first year, with zero expectations, obviously the program had not been built to the standard that it is. Bobby went 5-6. The very next year, they went 10-2. The very next year, they had 3 losses. The very next year, they had 2 losses. I'm sorry, 1 loss. The very next year, they had 2 losses. The next year, they did go 6-5. So they had a rough year in 1981. The next year, they had 2 losses. The next year, they had 3 losses. Bobby, and if you go look those up, they were almost always to either UF or a ranked opponent. I think 3 of the losses in all the years that I just mentioned, minus the 5 loss and the 6 loss season, were to ranked opponents or UF, who was a much better program at the time in the 70s and 80s. And so this idea of like, oh, you would have fired Bobby. No, there was no standard. Bobby created a standard. And so, yeah, if Bobby Bowden took over right now and went 5-6, if Bobby Bowden took over right now and went 7-5, yes, we would certainly complain about that. But the standard at Florida State had not yet been created. So it's not realistic to say, oh, you guys would fire Bobby right now. Bobby took 9 years to lose as many games as Mike Norvell has in 2 seasons. And that was taking over a program that was objectively awful. Florida State was not a great program that people were coming to all over the place. So this idea of like, oh, you guys would have fired Bobby back then. Listen, I appreciate the comment just because it gave me a chance to rant a little bit. I just don't think that's really accurate. Bobby built a standard here that now is not being upheld. If Bobby would have come in and had seasons like Mike Norvell did to start out his tenure, he probably would have gotten fired. But in his second season, they lost 3 total games. In his third season, they went 10-2. Like, yeah, it's just not the same. Like, they were way better off the jump with Bobby, and then they continued to be. In the 80s and 90s, when they were traveling on the road to play teams that they had no business playing, they were winning those games. And yeah, they lost some to Miami when Miami was winning national championship after national championship. And they've lost some to Florida when they shouldn't. But Bobby built an insane standard that Jimbo, for the most part, held up, not completely, but how many times did Jimbo win 10 games over and over and over again, or have us in BCS bowls, or have us in playoffs or national championship games? I think that is more of the thought. Like Jimbo just very much, Bobby just very much built a standard, and that's not being held up. I'm going to go back to this because I think Joe makes some good points that I do think that we should talk about. Everybody on the channel was predicting 7 or 8 wins when the season was starting, right? Like to start the year. That is right where we're at. Well, if we win the next 2 games, yes, we will get to 7 wins. If not, we are under that. We are under the 8 that was predicted. What happened? Why did the pitchforks come out? I've got a very simple answer for you there. The problem is not that they're getting to the 7 or 8 wins that we projected. The problem is that a projection at Florida State was 7 or 8 wins. The problem is that we could look at this season before it started and we could say, yeah, this staff and this program are not good enough to win more than 7 or 8 games. That's the problem. It's not the problem that Mike Norvell lived up to where we thought he would live up to this year. It's the problem that that's where we've lowered our expectation to. The fact that Florida State homers, Richie and I are absolute homers for these people. We've picked us every single week. Like every week on Wednesday night, we pick the Noles to win. We are homers. The fact that 2 homers sit here and say, yeah, Florida State's winning about 6 or 7, 8 games. That's the problem. It's not the fact that they may get to 7 wins if they go on a little bit of a run here at the end. It's the fact that we've lowered our expectation and our standards there. Ultimately, I don't feel good about the direction the program is going with its head coach. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love for him to never lose a game here in Tallahassee again. I just don't think that's realistic. I think at this point, he's shown you who he is. What is he like? 4 or 5 games over 500. He has a losing record if you take away the group of 5, like the wins against just awful competition like Charleston Southern and Kent State and stuff. So I don't know. Richie, I've ranted enough about Bobby and the standard. I'll let you talk a little bit.
No, I think you're spot on. Like the fact that when our preseason show came on and we said, 8 wins would be good, 9 would be really good. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
This is Florida State University. This is a team, a program that has a record that will never be touched by anybody. 14 straight years finishing in the top 4 of the AP poll. That will never be touched. It's one of the safest records you'll ever find. And now we're sitting here talking about, well, if he goes 7-5, maybe next year he can get us up to 9-3 or maybe even 10-2 and gives a chance at the play. No, I am done. I tried to start the show off on a positive note. I was trying to be happy about how everything was going on, but I'm at the point now where I am so done with this man. Like, I am not going to another Florida State game as long as Mike Norvell is the head coach.
You're not going to Tuscaloosa for Lindsay next year?
No. I want these players to have great games, great careers, go on to the NFL. I want the local businesses to thrive. So I hope others don't have my mentality and they still go to games and they still go to places like Garnet and Gold and other local businesses. But I am just to the point where I am so done. Like even last night, and we talked about it off air a little bit, TJ, like when we scored that first touchdown, I was almost emotionless. Like normally when Florida State scores a touchdown, I'm jumping off the couch and my wife thinks I'm a crazy guy. But I was like, cool, touchdown. the apathy has set in for me, and I think it has set in for many other Florida State fans. And if the administration doesn't realize that, it only will get worse from here. And I think that's where we're at right now. And they need to realize it.
So I think before the season, I think I predicted 6-6 was my official record. So yeah, Mike Norvell getting the problem is not, oh, well, they got to 6 or 7 wins. Why aren't you happy about it? Again, the problem is that we had to predict 6 wins at a place like Florida State. And that's ultimately
with this schedule.
Yeah, I was out when the season was starting, unless they very much overachieved that, right? Like I was like, well, they're probably going to go 6-6 and we're going to find a new coach. I don't know if that's the case yet or not. But yeah, like the problem is not that they're getting to the 6 wins. It's the fact that we had to predict that before the season. You should never predict a 6-6 season at Florida State. I mean, that's simple enough, right? And we'll see. Yeah, I'll tell you this too, Richie. We talk about Virginia Tech being awful. Man, NC State is so hot and cold. They lose by 5 billion last night to Miami. I mean, NC State looked like Florida did against Kentucky 2 weeks ago. Now, maybe they look different at home. Maybe they play a little bit better
on a Friday night.
Yeah. But yeah, Friday night in the conference, I think Florida State has like 4 wins in Raleigh since 2020. They've been just terrible there. I don't know, man. I worry a little bit. I mean, Florida State could absolutely win their last 2 games. And if he goes 7-5, I bet they bring him back. I ultimately don't think that wins against teams who have quit or who do not have a coach should save someone's job. I think that once the cake has been baked, as the kids say, the kids probably don't even say that anymore, that, you kind of know what you have. I think 7-5 will give this admin an opportunity to bring him back, which I know will make that apathy set in even more.
Good luck selling that to the boosters.
Yeah.
Let me just say that.
I do think that they've got a really good chance to win the next 2 games. I'm not predicting they win the next 2 games. I mean, I probably will once we get to Wednesday, because I ain't going to predict something else with Allie on here in a week and a half. But they're a 4.5-point favorite right now at Raleigh on a Friday night, as weird as that gets. And at this moment, ESPN has them with a 50.4% chance to beat Florida on the last day of the year, or the last day of the regular season. There's a good chance. There's a decent enough chance they go 2-0 down here on the stretch, and I don't really think that should impact what their administration does or doesn't do, but it very well might.
Yeah, no, but we'll see what happens. It's just the decision should have been made by now. I think the frustrating part is that it has not been made by now, because if you are following this program as our administration should be, as closely as they should be, then you realize Mike Norvell is not the long-term answer. You're going to be paying him regardless, one way or the other. Are you willing to find an extra few million a year to pay a different coach to relieve Mike Norvell of his duties? And clearly the answer as of right now is no. Maybe that changes by Saturday morning.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how they play down the stretch. If they win another game, I think there's a decent chance he comes back. If they win 2 games,
we're stuck.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to see it again next year. I think you're going to see the same thing. I really want to beat Florida. I'm not going to cheer against us. I don't care if they win Friday night or not. I do want to beat Florida. Like, that does mean a lot to me. And I would like to win that game in the Swamp. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm not going to cheer for us to lose. I mean, I'm going to Raleigh. I ain't going to cheer to get pee thrown on me while I'm up there. Sorry, Hunter. But yeah, I think that there's a real chance that they bring him back, and the results of these next couple of games will probably impact that. So we will see. Just very quickly before we get out of here, I do want to mention the Sleeper app. Make sure that you hit our code DFNS on the Sleeper app for a 100% match up to $100. We always appreciate Sleeper for their support. We will play the more or less game on Wednesday night for the NC State game. Try and make some money with us. Appreciate Sleeper for their support. Richie, before we get out of here, you got any shout outs or anything like that?
Yeah, shout out to everybody who still tunes in every Wednesday and Sunday and checks out TJ's videos throughout the week. We really appreciate y'all. We know it's been a really frustrating season, but we're all in this together, so we appreciate every single one of you.
Yeah, no, the viewers, the listeners that tune in and listen to us rant and say the same things week after week after week, you guys are the real MVPs. Because if nobody tuned in, well, we'd probably still do it. Me and Richie would just yell at each other. But yeah, we do appreciate you. So that's all I got for this week. Richie, we will be back on Wednesday night to preview NC State, which will happen just 48 hours after we preview it. And so should be a lot of fun to see how the world turns here over the next 2 weeks in Tallahassee. But I appreciate everybody that tuned in, and we will talk to you guys soon. Go Noles.